where we covered this in learning, so I'm going to start from this because I remember it was covered. Moshe began his long and fruitless prayer by saying, Lord of the world, consider how much I had to bear for the sake of Israel until they became the people of your claim and of your possession. I suffered with them. Shall I not then take part in their rejoicing? By forbidding me to enter the promised land, you give the lie to your Torah. For it says in the Torah, in his day you shall give the laborer his hire. Where then is my hire for the 40 years during which I labored for the sake of your children, and for their sake suffered much sorrow in Egypt, in the desert, and at the giving of the Torah and the commandments? With them I suffered pain. Shall not I hold their good fortune as well? As long as he suffered, no. But thou, God, tellest me that I may not cross the Jordan. All the time that we were in the desert, I could not sit quietly in the academy, teaching and pronouncing judgment. But now that I could not yet. But now that I should be able to do so, you tell me that I may not. He continued, may the mercy of you precede your justice, so that my prayer may be answered, for I well know that there is no mercy in justice. Thou thyself did tell me...
I found the place.
That's what I was covering.
Yeah, no, but unfortunately, that translation is very poor, because the down, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm children, I'm not talking about you.
Go right ahead.
It's the way that they speak, it's really ridiculous.
Okay.
I'm going to go and read a portion of the translation as best I can. Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan says, Yud Misos Suvos Alav Al Moshe. There were 10 times talking about Moses died, 10 times mentioned in the Torah. The Elaine, these are the things. Ein Kovel Yomechel and Moose. Behold, your days have come close to die. It's one time. Now, how many times do you have to mention a man's going to die? If you say once, it's sufficient. You understand? You don't have to go and beat him over the head with it. You understand? Then the next thing. Well, most Behor, you will die on the mountain. Number 3, Kion Chimes, and Moshe says, I will die. And then number 4, Kion Moshe, I know after my death. You've got to belabor it. 4. Number 5, after Moshe, even after my death. Number 6, Lifnei Moshe, before his death. Number 7, Ben Me'av Esrim of Moshe, he was 120 years old when he died. Number 8, and there died Moses, the servant of the Lord. Number 9, he Achrei Moshe, and it was after the death of Moshe. And number 10, Moshe Avdi Meis, Moshe my servant died. Why was it necessary to mention 10 times that Moses will die? I mean, we have a joke about a cat that there's been more than this, 10 times. Why is it necessary to mention 10 times? Medrash says, we teach from here, Sha'ad Yud Pa'amin, Nigozer Allah, Konesh Eretz Israel. 10 times God made a decree that Moshe would not cross over the Jordan into Eretz Israel, but Moshe kept on praying to God. V'adayin lo nizchos v'ze'ardi. Time it was written, it was never sealed. I want you to understand a great lesson from this. If a person has a decreed against him by God because he has sinned, the time to go and take steps to remedy that is immediately. You recall, we learned in the Turkey, it says, judge your fellow Jew in favor of marriage. And the rabbinic says this Mishnah is not talking about a completely wicked type, neither is it talking about a completely righteous type. But it's talking about a type you don't know about. That you have to give him the best benefit of the doubt, whatever he's doing. Now, in relation to a completely righteous type, as soon as a really righteous person sins, he immediately is repentant. Doesn't wait around until God lowers the boom and hits him or punishes him. He's immediately repentant. Now, this is the way a tzaddik, a righteous type, does, because a righteous type cannot tolerate the concept of being a sinner. You understand? So truthfully, if a righteous type is immediately repenting, then when you hear about what he did, if you're judging him unfavorably, you're doing a sin, because he is no longer a sinner. He has repented. You understand that concept? The same thing. Moshe Rabbeinu was told by God that you're going to die because of this thing. He kept on praying. So as a result, it never was sealed until finally it was sealed after the 10th time mentioned. This very difficult decree, until finally it was signed and sealed in heaven. So he says, so God said to Moshe Rabbeinu, it is a decree that I will not set aside. For a Jordan, you will not pass this Jordan, and that you will not be able to enter Eretz Israel. So at first glance, when Moshe first heard this, he had in mind, he said, I know what God is saying. Moshe. But first, he looked at it and said it was a simple thing in the eyes of Moshe, in his mind's eye, to upset it. Why? So Omar, because he thought to himself, Yisrael Jews, the Jewish people as a nation as a whole have sinned many sins. Many times. But and each time when I asked God for mercy for them, he immediately accepted my prayers, and he changed his decision in regards to them. God said, stay away from me, Shmidom, and I will destroy them. And Maxim, but God repented on the evil that he intended to do to his people. Then again, Kenu whatever, I will smite him with Arishenu, and I will drive him out back. Amon, when it says later on, I forgive you, I forgive them like you said. And with each time, God is amenable to tefillah and pray the way it should, supplication. I, Moshe, have never sinned since my youth. Below kosher changes, certainly she has asked me when I will pray for myself, the probably many that God will accept my prayers. So he made a slight miscalculation. First of all, in the case of the majority of the Jewish people, this is a Rabbi, a lot of people. And so therefore, even though Jewish people sin, God still wants Jewish people to continue living. An individual might very well indeed not have that clock to stop a judgment of this nature. And secondly, he did not immediately, right after, pray like he should have. He should have immediately, as soon as he heard that God was displeased with his action, immediately prayed. This was a mistake on his part. And because it was a mistake, when God saw that Moshe was not taking it as seriously as he should, because a tzaddik should always be very, very, very serious and careful. And if he, God forbid, makes mistakes, and we all make mistakes, there's no big deal about that. This is something that, yes, he was hesitating there, but it was corrected by his wife. But again,
But he didn't do it.
well, but the fact is that God accepted that as a Jew, and his wife accepted, and only the tefillah, he did not stand. He did not stand in prayer right away as soon as he heard this decree. So immediately God stood up in regards to this. He swore by his holy name that Moshe Rabbeinu should not come into Eretz Israel, because there's no question about it. Under all circumstances, every human being must serve God, 100%. Even as great a person as Moshe Rabbeinu must all the time 100% serve God. And if God forbid we make mistakes, and we do, then we must immediately repent that we made that mistake. Now that is the way, when you repent, you can avoid the punishment. You understand what I'm saying? But if God forbid you don't repent, if you don't repent immediately, God forbid, it could set in some kind of punishment. What? What did he do? What did he
He
do?
repented even before he'd made it.
He didn't
He
want
was
to do it.
stalling for time.
He was stalling for time.
So then why,
Again,
he was older?
it was the will of God. Many reasons. That question is asked several places. If Moshe hit the rock, why did Miriam and Aaron?
Miriam repented immediately after she said it.
I know.
Then why didn't she know?
It's a question that's asked. I have not saw this.
Yeah, apparently the plan was that because they were the so-called older generation that came out, all that generation had to pass away, who grew up in the desert and was knowledgeable of Torah for 40 years, were worthy of going into
No, not necessarily. It's not necessarily so. Because we have other Maimonides that Moshe put in during the time of the fighting of, that's 31 John 19. And so that's not necessarily so. He could have lived, but he need not have assumed a leadership role. He could have been sort of emeritus, but he could have lived. I mean, that should not be a market. An example of this I'll give you is like Yitzchak Avinu. Yaakov, came to Yitzchak, and then the pasuk talks about Yitzchak Avinu dying. The truth is, Yitzchak Avinu did not die right away after Yaakov came to him. He lived many years thereafter. So he lived many years.
22 years.
Many years thereafter.
Same day he was in mourning for
Yeah.
Joseph.
So because Yitzchak Avinu knew that Yosef HaTzadik was not dead. And so he was still alive and everything. So it need not be that he would die just because you're no longer in a leadership position in relation to the Jewish people. Just you go into obscurity, so to speak. Or you are in a position where you are more sedentary. You teach Torah rather than lead Jewish people in a more like a king. But he did not have died. And the question is, it's a very legitimate question, why did Miriam and Aaron not stay married to go? Because they did not hit the rock. Of course, it's mentioned several places, but the answer I have not come upon.
Could the answer be that the star of Yoshua, the time for Yoshua to take control had come?
Coming.
And
So what is
Israel
that?
were so used to giving cover to Moshe, Yoshua being in a secondary role, that it would have been hard
necessary.
for them to
No.
accept
I wouldn't-
Yoshua in the
I
full
wouldn't
strength
consider that about
if
him.
Moshe was still living.
Moshe could be still living as Israel, and Yeshua could still lead the Jewish people in the battle. When Moshe was alive, Yeshua was fighting Amalek. So Yeshua was accepted even before Moshe died. He allowed Yeshua to teach Torah to Bnei Israel in his presence. So Yeshua was teaching Torah before he died to the Jewish people. So there's no mark. If there's nothing that stops it, that's not necessarily so. That's not necessarily so. There's no reason in the world. It was the plan of God. Yet I've been made on this. I haven't come across an answer as yet with regards to that. I can postulate an answer in relation to, say, Aaron, because Aaron was always working together with Moshe. And so when Moshe would speak, Aaron would re-speak what Moshe spoke to the Jewish people. It's the target, that's the secondary in command. And so therefore, when Moshe said, "Here are you, you rebels," or whatever he said, Aaron said the same thing. Now, Aaron should have perhaps stopped at that point and not said it. And so perhaps he may be considered. I'm just giving a sport. But why Miriam should not merit?
But God didn't hold that as a demerit for Moshe, even though he said to them, because evidently they warranted that admonishment. So all he did is repeat it.
But then again, when Moshe hit the rock twice, he should have stopped him before he hit the
That's
second
something,
time.
yeah.
Now, Miriam, I don't know where Miriam was in this particular. If she was nearby, maybe she also should have stopped Moshe at that point. Who knows?
So
And
actually, then it's all three of them.
they were all three leaders of the Jewish people at the same time. They were all three leaders of the Jewish people, and they were collective merits. were the Jewish people, and so therefore it's possible that they were acting, they were culpable in a sense of being, what do they call it, accessories, as accessories to it, not necessarily as a person. He died, God took his soul, he kissed him. When a person dies on Shikshak, he doesn't die he dies with pure joy. Reuniting to God is joy, where it is Neshama. No question.
The soul is happy to go back to its
original
source, which is God.
In this particular case, this Medrash is talking about the soul being very reluctant to want to go back.
Yeah.
Which is a very unusual circumstance. The soul said to God, is there any other body that you could possibly put me in that could be in a better this person? I don't want to go. I don't want to leave him. I love him.
The soul didn't want to go back to God. It was happy to stay in motion. And that's really remarkable.
That is the highest praise in the world. You know what I mean? The soul says this is very, very wonderful up here where I'm at. Joshua. Yeshua had been learning from Moshe for 40 years, and he was the one most diligent in the learning of the Torah. Therefore, he merited to lead the Jewish people after Moshe. You see, a person...
And it wasn't... Moshe had two sons. But
Moshe taught all the Jews Torah. You understand? But from all the Jews, the most studious of all his students was Yeshua. And therefore, he was the one that merited to be the leader afterwards. Even though there were great Talmudic scholars, in addition to Yeshua, but Yeshua was the most. He is that we won't break this congregation. The language, therefore, Shua, this is an oath. God is swearing to Moshe that you're not going to do it because Moshe did not immediately start praying to nullify that decree, which he should have. That he did something wrong. Yes, of course. You always are cognizant of the fact he didn't do exactly what he was told. Once Moshe saw that the garden was stacked, he didn't stop. Now he's starting to fight. Those are a long time. He started fasting. One of the things you should do to nullify an evil decree. And he drew a circle around himself of Omar the Tzofah, and he stood in the middle of that circle. Omar, and he Zozmik, I will not move from this circle until you nullify that decree. This later on was emulated in the Gemara and Tainus. There was a very great tzaddik that also, when he used to pray to God, he would draw a little circle. He was called the circle maker. No. He was called the circle maker. And he would pray to God for rain. They would have rain and everything like that. And anything else he would pray. And God would, anything he prayed for, God would always grant his gifts. And God was told that God was very, very desirous of listening to his decree. So Moshe Rabbeinu, of course, knew how to pray to God. And he drew that. Also Moshe, what did Moshe do at that time? Lovash Tzak, he dressed himself in sackcloth. He sat there with Tzak, and he covered himself with sackcloth. He polished the Ephraim, and he covered himself with the ashes. He stood in prayer and in supplication before the Holy One Hashem, until spiritually the heavens and earth were shaking. Sidri Bereshit and all the order of creation was shaking. The fervor of his prayers. Amru. So all the forces of nature didn't know what's happening. All of them know that there's a tumult. There's a tremendous tumult in the whole world. The whole world is shaking. They didn't know what's happening. Time has come when God is renewing the world. Bas called, it came out of the voice from heaven and says, Omro, it hasn't come yet. But he's saying like this, he's giving a hint. In his hand is the soul of all man, all life, and in the spirit of all a person, a man. It's Moshe that's causing all this tumult in the forces of nature. Moshe Onavo, this man, Moshe was very humble indeed. Nikola Adom, Asher Alpin, all men on the earth are face to earth. Ma'asa Kodesh Baruch Hu, what does God do at that time? Moses is shaking the heavens and earth. The whole thing is trembling. But yeah, he made a public announcement in all the gates of the heavens, every heaven. And it was called Bezin, every heavenly tribunal. They should not accept the prayer of Moshe. He's got problems. And that prayer should not come to him, starting because his decree had been sealed by the heavenly court. Also, Malach HaMamono Rosa, the angel that was appointed in charge of all this public announcement in heaven. Uriel was his name. The public announcer. God's public announcement. We also saw Korah, God cried out in Shari and closed all the gates of the heavens. Klapi Malo, because the voice of Moshe is coming up and it's breaking through everything. Strong, powerful stuff. The picture out and he wants to go up to heaven because of the voice of the prayer of Moshe. His prayer was like a sword. He was knocking him down every heavenly barrier. He was knocking him down. He was cutting and slashing away. His sword of the tefillah was slashing away. It's very figurative. And there was nothing to hold it back. And his prayer was like the name of God itself. It was just terrific in its power. Rav of the Sofer B'nai Moram. He had learned it from another angel. That was Zoel, one of the head of the heavenly court up there. He was I'll also show who Omer at that moment. It says I heard after me roll. I heard a great tumult in heaven. And what they said, Baruch Shem, Baruch the glory of God in his place. You heard that, you heard a great tumult. We pray that every day. I heard a great tumult in heaven. Name Rosh Eluzai. So Rosh means trembling. Moshe, and it's talking about Moshe. Moshe is causing all this trembling in heaven. Moshe, Godom Old, the Eretz Mitzrayim, the Eini Avdi, Paro, the Eini Hom. The man Moshe was very great indeed in the land of Egypt and in the eyes of his servants of Pharaoh and the eyes of the people. Oh, what does it mean? Baruch, what does it mean? Blessed the glory of the Lord in his place. Goli, Markovi, Allah, when all the wheels of the heavenly chariot and all the fiery angels heard Shomar Kosh Baruch Moses should not accept the prayer of Moshe. And God did not show him favoritism. And did not give him additional life. And did not permit him to go into Eretz Israel, regardless of the very fervor and the powerfulness of his prayers. So the ministering angels, Omru, they said, Baruch, blessed is the glory of the Lord in his place. Upon him, God does not show favoritism. Not even to the greatest person that ever lived. The smallest or the greatest. How do we know how do we know that Moshe said this prayer to nullify this decree 515 times? He didn't say just once, depending on one time. He said it 515 times. Hashem, supplicated to God at that time, saying, and we use the word Eschanan, the word Eschanan, the Gematria. If you tear apart the letters of that word Eschanan, Vav is 6, Aleph is 7, Vav is 407, Ches is 8, 407 and 8 is 415. Nun is 50-50. 515 times Moshe prayed this prayer to God to nullify that decree. That's how much it was. 515 times. We also saw at that time, Omer Moshe Lifnei HaKol. Now, all these prayers did not help. That Moshe didn't give up at all. Just started. I mean, you got to have respect. You know what I mean? You're not dealing with children around you. You're just awe-inspiring. You know, the angel and master of the world. Golu Yodil Lefonecho, it is revealed and known before you how hard I worked. All the pain I paid myself, how Israel, how the Jewish people. Hard to you until they be faithful to your name. You know, when I first got them, they were just slaves. They were not faithful. They were worshiping idols. They were doing all other things. I had to work with them, build them up,